Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties, episode 2 for season 2017. My name is Lee. I am in Western Australia. I am joined this week by the returning, victorious from America, Vikas.
Hey everyone. Yes, I just got back from the Trump inauguration.
Yes, which we'll talk about first, and then after that we're going to talk about the Mike Baird stepping down as New South Wales Premier, and Gladys, whatever her last name is. I don't think either of us know how to say it. I don't think either of us going to try. Do you want to give it a go?
Berejiklian?
Yeah.
I'm sure I got that wrong. It's one of those weird names. Like I'm not saying weird as in like bad, but like one of those names that's not in the common vernacular for me.
No.
So I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it wrong.
Yeah, so we'll just call it Gladys, and we'll
Yep.
probably talk about, if we get to it, we might talk about David Leyonhjelm's tweet about the Melbourne driver incident. I don't know what the proper the guy driving through Bourke St Mall.
Yeah. Oh, we will definitely get to that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about the Trump. Your experience of the Trump inauguration. Tell us, Vikas. Give us the definitive calculation. Was the crowd bigger than Obama?
So here's the thing. I think what's happening is they're talking about the mall space
Yep.
at midday. And that was definitely smaller than Obama's one, but that's because the inauguration ceremony began an hour and a half later, actually. Part of that was due to new security arrangements. By the way, they banned cell phones, within I think it was like a 1 mile radius of the actual event, and that was a new regulation that they brought in based on the fact that they thought people could use cell phones to set up explosive devices near the Capitol. So just in case, so they used jammers and stuff like that, and they basically said don't bring your mobile phone, particularly if you're in that special area, because they'll confiscate it. So I didn't bring my mobile.
Okay.
So I don't have any photos of the actual place, but I did pick it up later, and I do have some video shots of the parade, and a really good shot of Ivanka Trump.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Do I detect a slight amount of a crush there, Vikas? Have you got a crush on Ivanka Trump?
No, not really.
Okay.
It's just she's generally a photogenic woman, so
Yeah.
and she's very good to take photos of,
Okay.
which seems to be part of the course of Trump's family. It's interesting. All of that aside, if you're talking about that mall area, I'd say probably Obama's was bigger. At least it looked that way. I don't know. I don't have a head count. But the thing is, like, if you're talking about like the entire city of Washington, and I met tons of cops who said this. They said like they were there 4 years ago, and it was nowhere near this packed. And the reason why it was the case was because there were so many fucking protesters.
Yeah.
I reckon if you include the protester count, easily.
Which Trump probably does, because I mean that's their claim. It's like, the actual number of people in Washington was greater than Obama's inauguration.
Yeah. Okay, so if you include those figures,
Yep.
it is a very, very large number. Seriously, guys, the population of Washington, D.C. is only 700,000, right? There was well over 1 million people in that city. Streets were... I have photos of me trying to wade through like a 6-lane street, right, which was just packed edge to edge full of people. And not just that, but for like almost a mile deep. So it was packed. The question is, are they all supporters or are they protesters? And I'd say they're protesters. Protesters definitely outnumbered the supporters.
Well, especially since the actual march for women, or whatever it was called, was like the day after. So like everybody's going to go to that thing is going to show up the day before, like especially if they're coming from like way out of town. Like it's not like they're going to come all the way to like drive up from Texas the day before.
Yeah. So my favorite thing is my favorite event there was we basically, so we left the area after this started happening. We're making our way to the parade, and we kind of got stuck at one of the entrances to the parade area because the protesters had basically taken up to just blocking the entrance, right? Because there's a queue. So what they do is they queue up, they get to the front and just not go through the doors. They just stop right there. So they block the entrance, right? Which is why the street is so thick full of people. And Antifa took this opportunity to basically start throwing bricks and shit and breaking into Bank of America and I can't remember the other store that was next to it. And what was interesting was whether you were a Trump supporter or whether you were there to protest, almost universally everybody despised those guys. I'm not even kidding. It was just like, you have to live in this like this is your society. You have to live amongst them, and you're breaking this shit. Like it just the anti-violence rhetoric was pretty much universal from both Trump supporters and Trump protesters. For what everybody was seeing in, oh, look, this is what the left behaves, definitely not. Those guys were pretty much universally reviled.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we sort of move on to talk about Baird?
It's a bit. What I found interesting, so this is going to seem strange, but like in the parade, there were a lot of Latino people. I'm not even kidding. A lot of Latino Trump supporters, which I found pretty peculiar. I asked one of them, and I wish I'd recorded this conversation because it would have made a really good one. Why are there some Latinos that support Trump? And they basically said, look, whatever Trump's talking about the wall, right? Whatever he says about the wall, that's keeping out, the unpleasant people who are, using coyotes and stuff like that coming in. He said basically the hard workers and all of that stuff, they'll still get in through the migration programs.
Yep.
Then they're not even remotely concerned about that. He said that his concern was basically that he said I left. I can't remember the border town that it was from, but he basically said he left his place because he didn't want to get hit by the drug gangs, the drug cartels, and that's why he came across. And he basically said, but they're basically misusing the fact that there is so much unmonitored border space to basically bring that criminal element across to the US, and he would rather not see that. He says he says we should take the good Mexicans in, but try to keep the bad Mexicans out. And I found that viewpoint a little bit naive. I mean, personally, I'm sitting there going I think you're oversimplifying it, but at the same time, I can accept that mentality. I mean, I can accept that that's what he believes.
Sure. I mean, the thing, I think it was Michael Moynihan on the fifth column podcast, which I highly recommend to everybody. If you like us, you should really listen to them because they're like us, but probably better. And
anything called the fifth column is not something I want to be associated with.
No, it's Matt Welch, the editor-at-large at Reason, Camille Foster, who was with Matt Welch and Kennedy on a libertarian show on Fox Business. Cool. And Michael Moynihan from Vice. It's a great podcast. It's like my favorite podcast, and they're really funny. Yeah, no, it's great. They make fun of it's called the fifth column. Like they understand what that means. Anyway, Michael Moynihan, he's a journalist for Vice. He made the comment when he talked to Trump, Latino Trump supporters, they're on board for it because South America and Central America is full of ethnic tensions. Not all of South America and Central America get along. And so when they say we're going to keep out the Mexicans, the Guatemalans and the Salvadorans and whoever else it is, I'm like, yeah, that's great. We don't want those guys either. They all don't like each other. So, and probably within Mexico, you're going to have different regional differences and whatever and ethnic differences. So, it's, I mean, having said that, the Latino vote wasn't that great for Trump compared to others, but still,
it was better than what Romney got.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't zero. And you'd think with the rhetoric he had, it'd be close to zero. But no, he's still got a lot of people, millions.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, let's move on to the New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, however you say it. Gladys B.
We've probably said it wrong. I'm just going to say we are probably saying it wrong.
Yeah. If you are Armenian or hang out with Armenians and know how to pronounce their last names, get in contact with the show. You're in Canberra. You much more about New South Wales than me.
Yeah, and plus I used to be in New South Wales as well.
Used to be. Yeah. So tell from your perspective as a New South Welshman.
How do you rate?
Let's talk about Baird first.
Yeah.
I mean, he's copped a lot of flack on our show. rightly because of things like lockout laws and just the general nanny state type stuff.
Yep.
Do you think Baird's got a positive legacy? Is there stuff we can sort of say, yeah, he was okay, but there's a couple of bad things, or is it mainly pretty bad with a couple of good things, or just bad?
So the reality is he's actually got out on top. The major stuff that's about to blow up in Gladys's face is so there's a lot of projects that are currently running in Sydney that are about to blow out in costs. So take your North Connex, take your West Connex. These massive infrastructure projects are going to blow up in costs, and everybody knows it because they've put out the projections and they know that this much has to be spent, and they're sitting there going like, "You've way underestimated this." And it's going to blow out at about the 2018 point. So Mike Baird's gotten out just in time not to have that egg on his face. Simultaneously, his legacy is... I think it's actually unfair because we lambasted him a lot for defending the lockout laws. And the reality is, even though he defended them, they weren't his. They were O'Farrell's. They were O'Farrell's brainchild and sort of legacy. And I think, realistically, people like us have unfairly, to Barry O'Farrell, not to Mike Baird, but unfairly to Barry O'Farrell, made the entire thing about lockout laws a Baird legacy issue. Now that presents a couple of problems in the sense that now Baird actually has a legacy, because if you take a look at it, if you take away that policy, he really didn't do anything, right? It's effectively just the middle management guy. He came in after all of the big stuff had been done. He sat there, made sure nothing really exploded, and then he's kind of palmed it off to Gladys just as it's about to explode.
I mean, just for some context, he wasn't even there for 3 years. Like, it was 17th of April, 2014, 23rd of January, 2017. Didn't even make 3 years, which, if you think about... That's a pretty short period of time for any leader. Yeah.
I
mean, obviously we had a lot of
not in the New South Wales context.
Okay.
Not in the New South Wales context, because if you take a look at it, the last premier to really sit a full term was Bob Carr.
Yeah.
And that was what, over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 12 years ago now. So I mean, like, Yama didn't sit the full term. Keneally didn't sit the full term. I'm sure there was a guy in between there. They changed premiers as much as we changed ministers. Morris, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they changed. Yeah, so New South Wales changes premiers as often as we change prime ministers. Which is why when they said, they called it the New South Wales disease, I went like, Bob Carr was patient zero.
Yeah.
So effectively, I think that she's been given a poison chalice, and that's just based on the fact that I know that the light rail has already exploded. I know North Connex is about to explode when it comes to Phase 4, and that's just based on what I saw in the Infrastructure New South Wales report. I mean, you can read these reports, guys. If you take a look at it, there's a projected $860 million expenditure in that, which is not accounted for. You can see this coming from right now.
Sorry, say that again. $860 million expenditure not accounted for.
No. As in, it's explained, but it's explained really poorly.
Okay.
As in, it's just like, there's going to be infrastructure bonds, it's going to be this, that. And I'm sitting there going like, I don't think you'll generate that much. I'm skeptical they'll be able to generate that much money through there.
Sure, I'm with you now.
Yeah. Sorry, I used the wrong word. Not unaccounted for, badly accounted for.
Okay, all right. Because I'm like, that's a lot of money to just not have on the books. Like,
yeah, it comes from book. Sorry, the figures are calculated from what we would call very risky sources. Well, not risky, but like very non-governmental sources of money. Yeah. So it's not as if the government has looked at their budget and allocated this money. They're saying it's going to come from infrastructure bonds, from Infrastructure Australia.
So basically it's coming from thin air. Like a lot of government. I mean, you look at how the governments in the US deal with pensions. It's just like, we're going to get this like enormous return that no one's ever seen in the entirety of their lives for like 50 years, and that's how we're going to pay for all our pension obligations. Like, no, you're not. It's just you don't have the money. You don't have to say you don't have the money.
I mean, I'm not saying that they're not going to be able to get the money. They will be able to get the money because they're a government organization.
Sure.
I'm just saying
it's not going to come from how they're saying it's going to come from.
Yeah, it's going to be financed through deficit, and that's and you can see that it's coming I'm not the only one that said this because I'm quoting someone else who said it. But you can see that it's coming, and anyone who's looked at infrastructure development in this country knows it's a time bomb about to happen in about 2 years. Now, the good thing is the fact that everybody's spoken about it, the people in the top levels have spoken about it, means that what I'm saying right now will be probably completely invalidated by something happening in the course of this year where maybe some sort of federal grant is worked out with Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah.
Right? And it might be swept under the rug through that. But like the current financing for that looks like it's going to explode.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, and like once talking about sort of Baird's legacy, and we'll talk about what Gladys B is going to be doing. Seriously, got Greyhounds. I mean, that was a Mike Baird decision that was done badly, and he did walk it back eventually, but not before it like hurt him like substantially.
You're right.
What else is there?
The casinos. The fact that he's called Casino Mike. That's freaking hilarious. So I joked on the day that it happened, and my post started getting deleted very, very quickly. About which casino are you going to be lobbying for? That's just me being a jerk, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody can get rid of the image of that mural with him with his, with the glass of wine or whatever it was, like, just mocking
at
him.
the casino. Yeah,
at the casino.
No, it's never going to go away because it's just the timing of the way he's done things. Now, like, I'm not saying that he's in bed with the casinos. It's just it looks like he is.
Yep.
Right, and it's because. So take a look at that after the what was it, the Morechrome family? Morechrome family? I don't know how to pronounce that. The guy who got hit. Yeah. So So there was an address where his father, who started the charity after him. So Mike Baird was basically doing a speech or something for that foundation, and then right after that he was going on the Premier's diary. Right after that he was meant to be at a casino event. Yeah. And these kind of things sort of fuel the Casino Mike sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he actually is. This is just a fun thing that I do because I troll the internet. But the optics of how he's basically been for the last 2 and a bit years with the casinos just makes it look like he's in bed with the casinos.
Well, it's libertarians talk about the bootlegger and Baptist, which for the 4 people who don't know what that is, who watch our show, it's the notion that when you have sort of special interests, you've kind of got the Baptist, which is the sort of high-minded, lofty idealism that sort of drives an issue, and then you've got the bootlegger, which is the person who's profiting off that situation. So going back to alcohol prohibition in the US, the Baptists were saying alcohol's bad for society, we should ban alcohol, and then you had the bootlegger, who was the one who was profiteering from all this legal alcohol being banned. And I guess in this scenario, Mike Baird he's the Baptist. I don't know if he's literally a Baptist. He might be. I'm not sure, but he is a Christian, who's again, and a conservative Christian who just happens to be sort of in league, sort of working in cahoots. Not working in cahoots, but his interests align with the interests of the casinos.
Yeah,
and that's what's always, that's always going to be driving all sorts of special interests.
So he's the Baptists and the casinos and the bootleggers. Pretty easy to figure out. Now, I mean, I don't think that'll actually be his. I think it'll be a funny joke that we say every now and then, but I don't think that'll be his legacy. I think more or less his legacy will be that he was a pragmatic dude that managed the New South Wales economy, and for worse, I think he'll be known as the guy with the guy who pushed the lockout laws, despite the fact that he actually didn't.
He inherited it. Yep.
Yeah.
So what about Gladys? Like, tell us, for those who don't know New South Wales politics, what has she been doing? What is she?
She was the transport minister. See, the thing is, Gladys. So the part of Sydney that I grew up in. So that's actually she is the member just 1 seat south from where I am. So from where I grew up, and when I was a young Liberal, I did attend a yearly trivia event where she would be the main she'd be the one hosting it at the Armenian community in Chatswood. And my interactions with her have basically been that she's a capable political operator. She seems to pay attention to her portfolios, and she's had a few of them over the years. And she oversaw the implementation of Opal, for example, which is the card system for public transport over there. It wasn't without its flaws, but she managed them generally well. It wasn't a debacle like the MyKey system in Melbourne, and that was largely thanks to her ability to navigate through how the public service worked with this payment system. By the way, payment systems are actually really, really hard for governments to implement, and I don't think people appreciate that. The government is not very good. The government's not very good at handling money.
No, unsurprisingly. I was about to say, you mean a government that just takes people's stuff without permission is good at managing how they organise payments? Surely not.
Yeah. They're much better at taking money than receiving it for goods rendered.
Yeah,
sorry, for services rendered. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So what? I mean, should we expect sort of more of the same then from Gladys, like compared to Mike Baird? Is she just sort of the successor?
It's going to be a continuation. It's literally effectively what you would see for the next until the next election is very much similar to what was happening even under O'Farrell. The Liberals are just coasting, and they will continue to coast until something happens. The thing people don't realize is that New South Wales, I refer to it as the Chicago Chicago of Australia. But that's not an entirely fair comparison because Chicago is predominantly Democrat, doesn't change very much from the Democratic Party politics. But the difference is in Sydney, whether it's Labor or Liberal that runs the show, the state government changes very little. And the reason for that is the public service inertia is actually really, really, really high. And people don't realize that it's extremely difficult to change the public service culture of New South Wales. It's the largest public service out of all the states. It also encompasses the largest federal workforce out of all the states, especially when you count all those Centrelink people on the ground, which means there's a lot of, I want to say, institutionalized processing. There's ways to do business there that you just wouldn't see anywhere else. Yeah. And this is just coming from someone who understands the way things work in Canberra. Canberra is not nearly as insidious as New South Wales is.
Interesting. Okay. Now, some of our Libertarian friends, Tim Andrews from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, especially, is very excited by Dominic. Another name I'm not going to try to pronounce. Perrottet, yeah. Who's the new treasurer? Who's pretty certainly talks very free market, talks very small government.
Well, his big thing is he once said taxation is theft. But look.
Well, so did George Christensen, but I don't think we would have as anywhere near a high opinion of him as we might.
Correct. And look, the reality is, Tim and I will get into a lot of fights on this. And he's probably going to be disappointed. But it's the exact same problem as it is with all other Liberals. He is constrained by party process. He literally will be doing very, very many unlibertarian things to get more power. And let's be honest, even where he is now, it means very little without the broad party room support. And as I mentioned earlier, there's an institutional sort of malaise that prevents any sort of change coming from the parliamentary side of New South Wales politics, which is why very little changes when it changes from Labor hands to Liberal hands. I did forget one thing that Baird did that was good, which was the leasing polls.
Oh yes,
Yeah, and I just remembered that, and that's actually a really good example of what I'm talking about. If you looked at it, that was a compromise position, right? They were the initial, what everybody was suggesting, what all the Auditor General and Infrastructure show, everyone suggested 20 years ago was sell the polls, right? You'll make the money off that. You'll get the money to build additional infrastructure. and the poles are a dying part of the electricity business, right? It's got stable income, but sure, you'll have super groups, sorry, super funds and stuff like that buy it, and make a steady income, but you can't exactly increase profits on the pallets. So basically, the suggestion came to sell them off, and the unions fought a very tough battle through the Labour Party, preventing Bob Carr from selling it and all of that stuff. And then when it finally came to Baird trying to sell it, he took it as he went to his compromise position of a lease. So there's a good example of where you can have the backing of large infrastructure organizations and the Auditor General and still fuck up in terms of delivering the actual policy to the people.
So better than nothing.
But yeah, better than nothing. So there is one thing about Baird which I should have given credit for.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk about David Leyonhjelm, because he's never said anything controversial at all. So after the Bourke St Mall incident recently, a couple of weeks ago, in the hours after it happened, David Leyonhjelm, the Liberal Democratic senator from New South Wales, he made a comment about. Now I actually forgot exactly what he said, but basically
he said better ban those semi-automatic cars.
Yeah. So basically, he brought in arguments about gun control into a tragedy, and it's sort of people who don't like David Leyonhjelm hated him even more, unsurprisingly, and it sparked a lot of discussion within the sort of libertarian community. What were your thoughts?
I made my thoughts on this really clear. I said, and I joined in at the right at the beginning. I said, if you don't understand the point he was making, right, then congratulations, you're not actually capable of understanding, what's the Socratic method of debate, right? Sure. Demonstrating by absurdity. Now,
what do you say for that? For the benefit of those who maybe don't understand what his point was.
So his point was basically, whenever there's a tragedy that occurs, any tragedy, right? Hell, we can take the King hit that occurred in Sydney. The first instinct of politicians is to basically milk it. Not just politicians, but the police or anyone who wants to get something done.
Yep.
What's the saying? Never let a tragedy go to waste.
Yep.
Right? Get in, push your policy through, ram it through with very little consideration for consequences, pass it, implement it, and by the time people realize that it's a bad policy, it'll take a lot of machinations to reverse it. Key examples of that: the lockout laws, counter-terrorism bills, hell, the Patriot Act in the US, which the spying programs that was passed at a moment, the towers had been taken down, and it was like Congress has to do something. And you ended up with basically spying on American citizens. So, tragedy. The principal thing of people who want to expand the powers of the state is to never let a tragedy go to waste. And that's effectively what David Leyonhjelm was saying. He was mocking it. He was saying, "Oh, now we're now gonna," and he used the typical gun control argument, like no one ever needs a semi-automatic gun or blah 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 blah. So who needs a semi-automatic car? There's no such thing, but the point is we got to, he was making the obvious fact that this is absurd as a way of communicating to people that, hey, maybe we should sit down and actually talk about this before we pass, draconian policies.
Sure. So do you think what he said was defensible or not? Were you okay with it? Were you comfortable with what he said?
I'm okay with it, but my general view is that anything you say is defensible.
Sure.
Anything anyone ever says is defensible. The question is, how good is that defense?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by defensible. So I thought it was not a great move. So, especially given maybe a little bit sort of sensitive because of all this stuff with the Adler, obviously, he is a shooter. He's made shooters' rights a big part of his. His overall kind of political strategy.
Really? He hasn't brought it up very much the only time I've heard it being brought up is when other people bring it up. He hasn't mentioned it in his speeches, and
Well, I mean,
the one quote they have, sorry, the one quote they keep bringing up is the one that they caught him on ages and ages and ages ago, and that was like them pestering for it. He doesn't bring it up in his speeches.
well, there's all this stuff to do with the shooting range in New South Wales as well. So, like, I think he did deals to try and, I think there was like a rifle range that was needing the lease renewed or something like that. There was something.
Sure. So constituent management, he found like the constituents
Sure.
came to him and said like, yeah.
And I mean, like, and that's, I mean, he's a vet. He works in country New South Wales. Like, it's like that they are the people he relates to and has contact with. So, like, I'm not digging him, saying like he's sort of some sort of calculation that the shooters are the ones that he needs to get reelected. But I'm just saying, like, it's a fact of his life. I mean, there's ways of making the point of let's not go overboard. Let's not do anything crass. And I just think it was really badly managed. It really just sounded like him being sour about gun control. I think for non-libertarians, especially, like for people who, like for you and I, who are sort of inclined to agree with him, like I can sort of say, okay,
no, that's a fair point.
But like I think for a non-libertarian, if you saw what he said, you're gonna think exactly what like the first person who commented on the tweet was, which is go fuck yourself, die, or something like that, and then of course he responded the way he does, which is I don't give a shit about you or anybody else. Like it's just not a good way of handling it. Like
first of all, David is not known for his personable skills.
Yeah.
Let's put it out there. He's terrible interpersonal skills. Now, I don't think it's an outreach type of tweet. I don't think it was intended to try and reach out and bring people into libertarianism. It was so what it did do, and it did it quite successfully, is take the wind out of the sails of people who were going to. I mean, there was the police minister who came out right after that saying we need tougher bail laws, right, to stop people like this going out there, right? The moment David Leyonhjelm, you might have noticed that didn't just get passed. Right, you might have noticed that Daniel Andrews didn't just pass that straight off the bat.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if
no.
Although I want David Leyonhjelm to be like influential, to be perfectly honest, I don't think the Victorian Premier gives a rat's about him. Like he's effectively a nobody.
Whether he does or not, the point is, as soon as David did that, right, their game was that their normal game was changed. They couldn't just say we need to make a change to the law and start pushing for it, because now they're going like, oh yeah, that David Leyonhjelm guy, he made a joke about this very same point.
Yeah, but I think any point he made, any valid point he made, was lost in the fact of just how badly it was done. Like you can make a good point and have it drowned out by just the stupidity of how you put it. And I think that's what happened.
That's true, but
I don't think.
Not.
Like essentially, okay, it's not outreach, but at least like you want to have somebody agree. I mean, what we saw, I don't know if you saw it, but I saw it on the sort of Australian libertarian groups. Even we libertarians were split on how to respond to it, and it would have been 50-50. People just saying it was stupid, and other people saying, well, just defending.
I'm looking at it purely from what the actual outcome of it was, and whatever we say, Daniel Andrews has not passed the increased police powers, which the police minister asked on the day that this happened. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, I don't think correlation is not causation. Like I don't.
That's fine, but if you can show me where someone has said something equally stupid and it's still passed, right? Then I will say, yeah, sure, there's your counterexample. But like I'm saying right now, right, we have a correlation where yes, he said something stupid, right? But it has worked effectively to take the wind out of the sails of basically what the police minister wanted, more powers. He wanted the power to basically just stick people into jail. That's what he was asking for. He was saying like people being accused of violent crimes should not have their bails allowed. Right? If you take a look at it, you can actually look at Matthew Guy, who's the Liberal opposition minister. He's taken these suggestions on board, and he's currently running with it. Right? But the current Premier of Victoria has not passed it. Why? Because someone has made a joke about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably more to do with the fact that Dan Andrews is a lefty, and he's going to have all sorts of lefty groups in his ear. all the this is like a revoking bail for all violent offenders is not not your sort of standard progressive fare, and it very much seems like Daniel Andrews is a creature of that kind of politics. So he's
as much as I'd like to agree with you, it hasn't been that way in other areas, right? So it's not exactly like I'm willing to buy that as like an argument for why he wants safe schools so badly.
Yep.
Right, but law and order is one of these things. I have not met a state premier yet that loves civil liberties and would not.
That I'll agree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and will not give it up if it gets them more airtime. Sure. Right, just remember there is currently the only place federalism is currently working in this country is in the states having a battle over who can have the least civil liberties.
That is true. Sadly, that is true. All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. I guess we'll sort of see how it pans out in the coming weeks. Well, I guess that means, that's it for this week's episode. Make sure you like and share and subscribe and all the rest of those things on iTunes. We're on YouTube. Share us on Facebook and whatnot. And we'll be back again next week with more discussion on Liberty and good things like that.
And we are looking for more people to come on the show. You literally can, if you're on Facebook, just message below this video. If you're seeing this somewhere else, go like our page and then message below this video.
Or comment on YouTube.
Yeah, or comment on YouTube. We do read those now. Well, I read them now. So, all right. See everyone next week.
Thanks, guys.